We call the meeting to order. If you join me in the pledge, I pledge allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please. Supervisors Esposito and Decker called in, and they are excused. Thank you. At this time, we will call up Todd Battle from CABA, and he will give his report.
Of course, Decker's not here.
Inside here before. New experience. So, well, I don't know how best to stand so I'm not in your way. I'll stand over here. So my name's Todd Battle. I'm the president of the Kenosha Area Business Alliance. At the request of the county board, chairman of the finance committee, we're here tonight to make just kind of a brief presentation. We'll cover a little bit in terms of what's going on.
Can everybody hear him?
Yes. Is that okay? We'll cover.
All right.
Is that all right?
Yep.
We'll cover a little bit about what's going on in terms of economic development in the community, and then we'll specifically touch on the high impact fund, which we partner with the county to administer in some of the recent projects we've done with that fund.
She wants you to talk in, so so it records.
Okay. All right. Happy to do it.
You don't have to.
You're not going to be in the way; they could see past
Okay.
you.
Well, good. Anyway, so the intent is to give you a little bit of a brief presentation or overview in terms of the county and its economic development, specifically touching on the high impact fund. So in terms of progress report, I've got a short presentation here which I'll cover, and then I'll be happy to answer any questions. 2013 has been an incredibly active year for the county and for CABA in terms of economic development. In the last 12 months, we've announced about 2,600 new jobs for the county and about $300 million of new capital investment coming into the county. And the slide here shows a few of those projects. I'm going to speak a little bit in depth about a few of those that we've had a role in and talk a little bit about how they came to fruition. First, I'll talk a little bit about Meijer. Meijer is a Grand Rapids, Michigan-based retailer. They have about 200 stores scattered throughout mostly the Midwest. They are on kind of an aggressive growth mode, and they want to expand rapidly into northern Illinois, Wisconsin, and I think onward west towards Minnesota. They're in the process of siting about a half a dozen major stores in southeast Wisconsin, one of which will be in Kenosha. To serve that development, they approached, through a site consultant, they approached us about siting a major Midwest distribution operation. We spent a good chunk of time working with the company on a potential greenfield development. Ultimately, a deal was cut where they actually acquired Super Value's Midwest distribution operations in Pleasant Prairie. They closed on that acquisition in late December of 2012. Almost immediately, they began plans to add about 250,000 square foot addition to the facility. When done, they'll have about an 830,000 square foot facility and employ about 500 people there, and this will be their major distribution point for stores that they're growing in Illinois, Wisconsin, and points westward. A neat project to be a part of. We think having Meijer come in and repurpose the Super Value facility was very important. Additionally, we were able to work with Super Value and their Midwest region headquarters office to keep that employment center in the county. We found an alternative site within Lakeview Corporate Park, and they signed a lease to occupy a 45,000 square foot office building also in the park. So they've moved completely off the site. They've turned it over to Meijer. Meijer's in the midst of putting a major addition onto the facility and plans to open early next year with their distribution operation there, while they're also building out stores throughout southeast Wisconsin. Another project that was announced early in the year in 2013 is a company called Ta-Chen International. They previously were based in Gurnee, Illinois. They had a steel distribution facility, a couple 100,000 square feet. They were landlocked and were growing and needed to find a new site. They ultimately selected a site in Lakeview Corporate Park. They are in the midst right now working with CenterPoint Properties to turnkey a new 470,000 square foot facility. Their capital investment's about $36 million, and they currently employ somewhere in the neighborhood of about 60 to 65 employees. So really nice, another nice addition to Lakeview Corporate Park. International company with a big and growing presence. Another international company that has recently made its way to Pleasant Prairie is a firm called Kona Cranes. They are a manufacturer of control panels, mostly used in lift and crane business, which is kind of their core business. They are locating an operation in Lakeview Corporate Park in about a 45,000 square foot facility. The facility they're actually taking was constructed by a developer on speculation. It was originally leased to Teleflex Medical for an expansion that they did, and then Teleflex Medical sold their medical business to a company called Tecomet, and they no longer needed that capacity. They put most of the operations back into their main Kenosha factory, and Kona Cranes has come in and leased the majority of the facility. They'll have about 40, 45 employees at the site right now, and they're doing a lot of neat stuff in the facility. We recently toured it, and it's a really nice business to have in the park. They do some really neat stuff. Hanna Cylinders is another company that announced this summer that they were coming into Lakeview Corporate Park. They've signed a long-term lease on a 100,000 square foot manufacturing facility in the park that had been vacant for a number of years. They'll bring with them about 105 employees, and they'll make a nearly $3.5 million investment. This is one of the companies that we've used the High Impact Fund to help support their project, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. I've got a slide specific on the High Impact Fund. And then probably the two more recent projects here this fall, a couple of other really nice projects. Kenall Manufacturing, another firm that we've used the High Impact Fund with. They just announced in September that they plan to acquire about a 34-acre industrial site in the business park of Kenosha, and they will construct a 350,000 square foot facility. This facility will be their headquarters, their main manufacturing facility, and it will house all of their technical and R&D operations. They're a very fast-growing LED lighting company, really nice business to bring into the community. 50-year-old company, family-owned, privately held. The current leadership of the company, second-generation family in the company, and they really have a nice growth trajectory. They're investing pretty heavily into new product development, and they'll be a great add for the business park of Kenosha. And then last, probably the most notable recent announcement involved Amazon, and they officially at the end of October, beginning of November, all of the ink had dried on their contracts, and they announced that they were moving forward with a project in Kenosha. Their development company that's building their site for them has acquired about a 150-acre site in Kenosha, which is actually very close to a Gordon Food Service development that we partnered with the county and the city a number of years ago to infrastructure and help serve, with the idea that there'd be more industrial development in that corridor. Amazon's now moving into the area. They'll invest several $100 million in the construction of a 1 million square foot plus facility, and they expect that they'd employ a minimum of 1,100 people once fully operational, and probably quite a bit more. The activity level has been really good this year. We have earned a lot of media for that, for the county, for our economic development efforts, and we're consistently trying to work to leverage that media for more. It is one of those things in our business that activity begets activity. So we've had a number of kind of notable wins and announcements about new jobs, new investment, new activity. It gets interest from the development community and from private sector investors and companies that want to know, what's going on in Kenosha, that all this activity is coming there. So our project pipeline is pretty solid right now with a lot of good opportunities. So we're trying to work hard to capture a number of those. Specifically, I wanted to talk a little bit about the High Impact Fund. A few years ago, the leadership of the county sat down with CABA, as we, at the time, were really trying to figure out a strategy for some major wins, really in a response to the Chrysler Kenosha engine plant closing. The county had bonded for some money as part of a retention effort, as we at the time had a handshake agreement with Chrysler to put a new V6 engine line into Kenosha. That did not come to fruition, and the idea behind the high impact fund was really to kind of take lemons and make lemonade. So the concept was, a lot of times we're working competitive deals. There's only so much we can do with our loan funds. There's only so much communities can do with their ability to attract investment. The high impact fund, the idea was this would be a great asset that we could have to make very flexible and aggressive incentive offers to help get deals done. And so I'll talk to you a little bit about the 3 deals that we have done with this fund. Have been a major expansion from Bradshaw Medical, Hanna Cylinders, location of a new 100,000 square foot, 100 employee manufacturing facility in Lakeview Corporate Park, and then Kenall Manufacturing's announcement of about a $25 million, 350,000 square foot facility that could employ up to 600 within 5 years in the business park of Kenosha. All told, those 3 projects, 2 were at $250,000, 1 was at $1 million. All are structured as performance-based incentives. The companies have received from us or will receive from us loans with forgiveness provisions. If the company meets the criteria set forth in terms of making the capital investment, creating the necessary jobs, maintaining the necessary jobs, hitting the payroll estimates that were pledged, after a 3-year period, those loans could be forgiven up to the full amount. And then the company owes us a 5-year maintenance period. And during that 5-year maintenance period, they have to maintain all of those same standards. And if they were not to do that, we have the ability to request repayment of the loan. Total, we've used $1.5 million, or we're in the process of using $1.5 million through these 3 projects. That $1.5 million so far, this slide tells you kind of the bare minimum that are kind of the baseline requirements that these companies are held to, or their standards. So that's one measure. We think the companies were fairly conservative in some of their estimates. And so we really think the $1.5 million that we've used has helped us leverage about $30 million of new capital investment for the community. So about a 20-time return on that $1.5 million, and about 800 new jobs for the community. Those 800 jobs, if you put it into the $1.5 million, it comes out to a little under $2,000 per new full-time job. So far, we think that fund has been a really important piece of our economic development offering. We've done 3 what we think are really good deals, and the return on investment appears to be really solid. We've got some performance measures built into all of these agreements, and so they are performance-based. The companies need to perform based on the pledges they've made to us, or they'd be subject to repaying the loans. And we think it's been a nice offering. We were here before you at budget time to talk a little bit about future allocations to that fund as well. With this, we report regularly on this, as we do on our other revolving loan funds. The county has established the County Finance Committee as the body we typically report to. So at least once a quarter, we're in front of the Finance Committee with a quarterly report on loan funds, high impact fund, and economic development items, just for reference. This is a tool that we've started using more recently in our organization to really kind of be a simple scorecard, and I think you might have one. If the slide's hard to see, I think we passed a few out there. And it just talks about how we're performing against our annual goals in terms of jobs, investment, and a few other metrics that we track. There are the goals that we have on an annual basis, where we're at through the end of November for 2013. So we track jobs, we track new capital investment, we track leads, and we also track things like visitors to our website, the projects that we've helped finance through economic development financing, and then business retention visits. All of those are either on par, very close to where we want to be, with the exception of one, and it's our BRE program. We're about half of where our goal would be. Not to make an excuse, but the disclaimer here is that program, there's really a dedicated staff person in our office that runs that program for us, and it's a near full-time effort, and we were short-staffed at the beginning of this year, and really kind of fell behind in that program. When we ramped our staff back up in July, we've really kind of got right back on track, so that we're about halfway where we should be, but we really had that position staffed for about 6 months out of the year. So I think we're on pace to get back on track with that. And that's just kind of an overview. I'm also here to answer questions or talk about projects, financing, high impact fund, other things you might have questions about, but that's kind of an overview of some of the things we've been working on during 2013. Thank you.
Any questions? Supervisor Rose?
Todd, perhaps you could expound on, for the board, on this high impact fund. What kind of wages are the people that these companies are going to employ, and how does that involve the impact fund?
Yeah, so the high impact fund, when we set it up, there were certainly some guidelines the county board and its finance committee wanted with respect to this fund, and the idea was, let's use it to do high quality economic development. So there's a contract between the county and CABA that kind of spells out the terms and conditions of what we can use the fund for, and what's the definition of high impact, and what are the types of wages we'd be looking for. Our goal with the program is that the projects that we get involved in are paying wages at or above the county median income level. And with Kennel, Hanna, and Bradshaw, all of those have exceeded what kind of the baseline standard would be. So these are, all three are advanced manufacturing companies with pretty high-tech operations and average salaries throughout the facility that are what we kind of envisioned when we started the high impact fund.
Most of the county board supervisors probably aren't as finance committee members on your reports to the finance committee. Could you just tell them, you do report to the finance committee, but how has the repayment been and the default level, particularly through this recessionary period, on the various loans that CABA has given?
Yeah, good question. So CABA administers 3 different separate but fairly significant revolving loan funds on behalf of the county. It's a fund that was funded by a U.S. Department of Commerce Economic Development Administration grant. It's a small cities revolving loan fund through the state of Wisconsin that uses community development block grant dollars. And then there's a county revolving loan fund that was originally funded with county investment. Round numbers in total, there's about $11 million plus or minus in those 3 funds that we manage. They're part of about a $30 million portfolio that we have under our umbrella. The performance of the loan funds has been fairly strong. We typically use them to make low interest loans and gap financing for new or expanding companies to help support their expansion. The last several years, 3, 4, 5 years, we've really had no major defaults, knock on wood, or no major deficiencies. Most of our loans perform very well and our borrowers do very well. We spend a lot of time making sure the projects are good projects, but the underwriting is also intended to make sure that the people that are borrowing the money and the companies have good business models and are going to be around for a while and pay us back. So lately we've had really good performance overall throughout the entire portfolio.
And each time you come to the finance committee, you report to us how much is owed, the default rate, and what new loans have been given or approved by CABA, correct?
Yeah, each quarter there'd be a kind of a, here's the checkbook, here's what's in it, here's what's committed, here's what's outstanding. For the loans that are outstanding, here's who owes what, here's how those payments are coming in, and it's kind of a complete accounting of what we have. It's a very transparent process in terms of, we try to be a little sensitive to some of the borrowers are private companies, sensitive to their financial information, and I think that's kind of the reason that CABA is a little bit separate from the county to be able to move quickly and work with private companies. But in terms of reporting back to the county in terms of performance of those economic development funds, we're very transparent about who has the money, what are they doing with it, and how are they doing in terms of paying us back.
The standards for the high impact fund, did you have input from the county board supervisors or the county administration on the standards?
Yeah, I think as we set that fund up, the idea was we wanted to make sure it was a program that made sense for the county board and was one that they could support in the administration. Because if we were successful with it, we thought there might be an opportunity in the future to build upon it and do more with it. So there was a extensive dialogue when we started that program to make sure that, you know, what we would do with it would be within, you know, within the boundaries or the guidelines that the county set forth in terms of good economic development.
These are, I think, were some of the issues that were raised by various county supervisors during the discussion in November on the county budget. So that's why we invited you to speak to the entire board. I think some of the supervisors were unaware of what kind of standards there were, the accountability that CABA had to the Finance Committee. So I certainly appreciate you coming and filling us in, or filling all of the board in on some of the things that CABA has been doing. And perhaps you could just finish with a few comments on how you see the future here, what's in the works just in general. We're not asking you to divulge any private negotiations or anything like that, but what do you see for the future?
Yeah, I just go back to an earlier comment. I mean, kind of activity and momentum kind of begets activity and momentum. So right now, there's a lot of interest in this corridor. It's a great corridor from a geographic location, very close proximity to two major metro areas. I think the state of Wisconsin as a whole, and southeast Wisconsin in particular, has done a number of things that have been favorable in terms of the business climate. Frankly, a lot of our investment is coming here from Illinois, largely because there are some business climate issues there that have gone unaddressed. But we continue to see a lot of interest, a lot of activity, and you know, so not that. We also need to be, you know, thinking about some of those other kind of major infrastructure issues. And that's why I appreciate the county board and our municipalities and other leaders in the community talking about infrastructure and roads and broadband and other kinds of things that have long been kind of an attractive advantage that Kenosha County had in the economic development world. Really well maintained, well invested in communities that had good, solid infrastructure that could support business development. So I think as the development activity is picking up, it's a little bit harder to stay ahead of that curve, but I think our communities are generally doing a lot of the right things.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Rose. Supervisor Skalitsky.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, Mr. Battle, thank you for coming and summarizing and giving us a very high-level overview of what you guys are doing. Although you spend more time at the Finance Committee and get deeper into details, I don't think the board in general needs that. But I would encourage you to maybe come here, maybe if it's not once a quarter, perhaps twice a year, and just give a summary like this. I thought it was very informative. I want to congratulate you on your successes because they have been substantial. And I am familiar with a number of those companies. One thing, they are high value because it's manufacturing based in a lot of those companies. And so those are you know, excellent wage earning and infrastructure building type opportunities. So I want to commend you guys for all your efforts there. If you looked at your current high impact fund, and I realize it's rotating and it kind of varies between 11 and 30 million overall, have you gotten to a point where now you've committed all the funds available? Because realizing jobs meet your, employers meet your criteria, and yes, the loans are forgiven. That's exactly the intent and purpose behind it. But I'm wondering, is it to a point where now you're becoming unable to continue to reach out?
Yeah, good question. So I'm just going to clarify. Under kind of CABA's administration, there's a high impact fund, which the county board has been very generous in supporting and funding. And then there are a myriad of low interest loan programs. So the high impact fund, so far we've funded it with about with $1.5 million, either taken in or committed. and that $1.5 million is pledged between Bradshaw Medical, Hannah Cylinders, and Kennel. So the dollars that we've been allocated through the High Impact Fund have come in the door and gone out the door to do deals. In our loan funds, I guess we'd call it utilization, but we certainly have capacity in those loan funds. We're probably, probably maybe running at a 60% plus or minus utilization rate. We have available capacity. The point with respect to the loan funds, there's a lot of factors influencing kind of loan demand. Some of it is, I think banks are getting a little healthier and looking to grow loan portfolios, so they're being pretty aggressive. Interest rates are historically low and have been there a while, so some of the loan funds we manage have interest rate floors that make it challenging for us to call our loans low interest. There's a barrier on what the interest rate can be. And then in some of these projects, which are very competitive site selection projects, when we would talk to a company, say, one of the things we could put on the table to offer you is a low interest loan or a loan, we can get financing. The loans that we have to pay back, we can get from a bank, we can get from an investor, we can get from other form of financial institution. But it might be useful to us, but it may not. So that's where that high impact fund clearly has made a difference in the margins, because our ability to be aggressive and flexible with that and structure forgivable loans definitely, I think, has helped us close a couple of deals that maybe otherwise we wouldn't have.
Okay. And I was certainly one of the supervisors asking some questions because, of course, I don't sit in the finance committee, but I had an interest of, okay, we're committing this bond and money, where is that? So it was very informative that way. But I'd encourage you, if you really feel as though CABA has got some tremendous opportunities, but the one thing you're lacking is maybe taking a look at that high impact fund and coming back for some additional support from the county board, certainly do so, and maybe do that through the finance committee, I'm not sure. But these are success stories that I don't know everybody was aware of. I was certainly aware of some of them, but not all of them, and didn't know your involvement in them or not. And so I would encourage you to come and sit before us in the future. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Skalitsky. Supervisor Grady?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't think it's any secret to most of the people in this room that a number of years ago, the fiber network was laid in Kenosha County, previous administration through this administration as well. It's been expanded. And it's the backbone of what can be labeled an information technology system. We see now in the city where we may even have some wireless Wi-Fi that will be downtown in Kenosha. Again, a little bit more consumer orientated, not so much commercial or industrial, but it's still there. My question is twofold, Todd, if you could just kind of give us a little bit of your impression, because you deal with so many different entities that come through and eventually decide to set up shop here in Kenosha. And that is, when you look at the commercial end, our black fiber network, A, how important is that to a prospective commercial entity? And we're talking large enterprise. And then B, give us just kind of a feedback from your perspective. Give us a report card. How are we doing overall in supplying that infrastructure quality-wise that they would seek out?
Yeah, I think I understand the question. So telecommunications infrastructure, in terms of how does it contribute to economic development, it kind of mission critical. You got to have water, you got to have sewer, you got to have sites, you got to have broadband. So you kind of got to have it. I'm not sure in terms of company subscribers how many are actually, my impression of our county dark fiber backbone is it's really been built for public safety, county, schools, and has some commercial application, though maybe not yet fully leveraged. My impression is most of the private sector development, companies moving into business parks, companies moving into Lakeview Corporate Park, they're going on a commercial backbone, AT&T, Time Warner, those types of companies. So the infrastructure is critical to have, both for public sector, schools, and private industry. I'm just not sure who's on which network. I just know it is a key factor in a corporate location decision to have kind of a robust telecommunications infrastructure.
But in terms of what you're observing, we certainly have adequate capacity between whatever is existing. We're doing okay in that regard. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's my question.
Thank you, Supervisor Grady. Supervisor Molinaro.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Just so there isn't any confusion, and I believe there may be at least a little bit here in the county board, there is, under the 2014 budget, $500,000 that has been pledged to the High Impact Fund, $250,000 that's available immediately, and another $250,000 that is available at the simple request of CABA and the showing of the need, if you will, and that the dollars have been pledged. So when we're asked here, or the statement is made that should you determine that you need additional funding, don't hesitate to ask. While I support that, there is $500,000 available under the 2014 budget that this county board approved. So let's not get confused that somehow we're out of the dollars in this high impact fund. So that's number one. Number two, while I enjoy Mr. Battle being here or wherever he gives his reports to the county, it was also stated that we don't get this follow-up or quarterly report, and here it is on your desk again. I think as long as I've been on the board, this report has been on our desk every quarter. So I'm going to urge you to take a look at it. And I say that for a couple of reasons, because I want to take a moment here to recognize Todd and the entire staff over at CABA. There isn't an issue that has come up, and keep in mind, we're not the only ones that they work with here at the county. You've got Pleasant Prairie that vies for their time and their energy. You've got the city of Kenosha that vies for your time and your energy. This whole downtown redevelopment effort is being spearheaded largely, if not nearly entirely, through CABA. The town of Summers, I know you're involved wherever you're asked. And I want to say to you and to CABA that there is, in my opinion, and in fact, I'm heading down to Atlanta tomorrow on a project that we're working on, and it is nothing but a cluster trying to get through some of the approval processes to get a development off the ground in some of these other communities that I've done work in. We are extremely fortunate in Kenosha County. We have a hell of a staff at CABA. I commend you, Todd, for all that you do and the energy that you bring to the effort. It's evident every time we talk about a potential development here. I think you've surrounded yourself and the CABA organization with a great group of people. And it amazes me that every time somebody asks, CABA says, yeah, we can do it. And typically you do, and you do it with exceptional results. So I want to thank you. The numbers, of course, I hear them on a regular basis. We talk outside of the county, but you look at the scorecard here, and this is one heck of a story to tell, and I won't get rid of this because we ought to be sharing it all over. So thanks for the good work, and keep it up. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Molinaro. Supervisor Noble.
Thank you for bringing us up to date on, but a couple questions. I believe one of the companies on here that struck me by surprise is Mighty Grand Dairy. And maybe if you can, tell us a little bit about that. And it looks to me like they've paid it off, everything they've borrowed. So also talk about some of this money CABA's been around for a long time, and some of this money has recycled itself through several different companies. I don't know if you track how many companies have actually borrowed money and paid it off, and all that money has been relent to another company. Yeah. If you can talk about that.
Yeah, first question first, the Mighty Grand Dairy, several years ago, the state of Wisconsin had a lending program that they called milk volume production. So it was really targeted to help small to mid-size and maybe even larger dairy companies put additional infrastructure into their operations, make investments in technology, new equipment, new machinery. The beauty of that program from a CABA, Kenosha County perspective is the state would, I don't remember the dollar amount that Mighty Grand Dairy received, but the state funded the entire loan. It was made as a low interest loan to the company, and the repayment of principal and interest went into one of our Kenosha County revolving loan funds to kind of grow the base of the fund. So I think Mighty Grand Dairy has now fully serviced their note, so the entire amount of money that they were loaned plus interest has been paid back and is now in the general Kenosha County, state of Wisconsin Small Cities Revolving Loan Fund program that we manage. And that is kind of the idea. It is all of these funds are intended to be revolving loan fund programs, make loans, do a good job of underwriting so that the company's got the ability to pay it back. They pay it back with interest. We loan it out again and just kind of keep doing it over and over again. I don't necessarily know without a little bit of math, how many companies over the years, Cobb has been in business 20, 25 years, how many different companies. For us, typically, we might have anywhere between 45 and 55 distinct borrowers that have outstanding notes with us. Typically, companies scattered throughout the county that have leveraged us for some sort of an expansion project.
I just wanted to, I think by touching on that, it lets everybody know how diverse the portfolio is. I mean, we all recognize the names like Amazon.com, but it's helping, these monies help out small dairy farmers as well. So it's important for supervisors to keep that in mind too. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Noble. Supervisor Kohlmeyer.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to echo the congratulatory comments to Kaba and you and the staff. I think you guys have done an outstanding job bringing jobs and investments to Kenosha. Just one quick question on I think you guys have done great on the deals maybe that we didn't get that you're talking to the companies. Is there a general theme or an area that we can improve on? Is it infrastructure you kind of highlighted or something else?
Yeah. So. We don't necessarily like to advertise losses. We probably in the last 1 to 2, we probably had one major deal that we kind of feel like got away, and it's a company that's actually building about a 400,000 square foot facility in Sturtevant right now, UNFI, United Natural Foods Inc. So it didn't necessarily get away too far. It landed in the region, and people from Kenosha County will work there and work on that project. But the reason we weren't able to land that particular deal was the inventory of sites that we had that could meet their needs for speed, cost, infrastructure was limited. We had a couple of sites and they were not ideal for this particular company. They've been good for other companies. So if anything, I'd say maybe the broader real estate inventory and site options that we have, the more likely we are to find something that works for an end user. That was probably one that was mostly driven by real estate and infrastructure issues, and we just didn't have a shovel-ready site in their price range that they could develop quickly enough.
Thank you, Supervisor Kohlmeyer. Supervisor Skalitsky, did you have?
Yeah, just one other question. As you talk to these companies that are moving here, maybe it's a couple top 2 or 3 reoccurring themes of the most important attributes or benefits of the area. Does anything resonate, multiple times over that we have an influence or can have an influence over? Thank you.
Other than we're not Illinois, no. There are certain themes that emerge in terms of a company's site selection process. I mean, I think a major consideration a lot of companies is at the top of the list is just kind of labor force, quantity, quality, future. What's our talent pipeline look like, both if we're going to move and expand there now and 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now. So I would say kind of education, workforce development, labor force issues are a top level issue. I think, kind of stability in terms of the community, its government, its systems, its business climate. The companies feel us out pretty good in terms of if they're going to make an investment and be here for the long term, they want to make sure that, they know what they're buying, so to speak. So those are 2 themes. And then, really it's kind of different strokes for different folks. Depending on who you are and what you make or what kind of process you have, you might be looking at different specific things. So it can be a little bit all over the map, but those are 2 themes we see a lot.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Supervisor Skalitsky. Supervisor Noble.
Yes, I want to let all the supervisors know how fortunate we are And we're fortunate because we have Mr. Battle. Mr. Battle was recently recognized as one of the top 40 business executives in the state of Wisconsin under the age of 40. So we're very lucky to have him, and thank you and congratulations.
Thank you, Supervisor Noble. Seeing no more lights, thank you very much, Todd.
All right, thank you. Happy to do it. Thanks.
This time we'll open the floor up to citizens' comments. Any citizens wishing to speak? Any citizens wishing to speak? Any citizens wishing to speak? Seeing none, citizens' comments are closed. Announcements of the chair. If you are interested in signing up for the Christmas party, please get the information and stuff to Mary. That's all I have. Supervisor reports. Supervisor Alverman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to keep everybody abreast of new things that are happening and things that are going to occur over the next year or so. One of the things that's been happening for 2 years is now actually being worked on. If you followed the news and my reports, the 60th Street Tower project is underway. Today was supposed to be the day that they brought in the large cranes to continue and to get to the full height of that tower. I'm imagining with the weather today, I didn't get a phone call, but that may not have happened. But things are underway there. We're looking for a March completion. A new thing that I want to start reporting on, so there's no huge surprises, is the thing that I'm sure many of you, and it's not been a major part of your life in my business, it is the emerald ash borer is a disease that has moved from the East Coast to the Midwest now, affecting ash forests throughout the country. And it's into the state of Wisconsin. It's into Kenosha County in most areas. We had a forester that the county executive and park staff hired to do an assessment of our properties. The county executive, his chief of staff, myself, a representative from the DNR, and our consultant met and went over our inventories. But what we're going to be doing is reporting to you, and naturally there's going to be budgeted items over the next few years that we're going to be discussing and asking for. We have a large population in some of our properties. Highland properties like Petrifying Springs up in the oak forest, you do not. Low-lying areas, you have a lot of ash. They like wet feet, as the gardeners say. So we have some heavily populated properties. Fox River Park is one, where we have approximately 1,200 to 1,300 trees. The Brightondale Golf Course is heavily populated in ash, and that creates a problem of its own because some of them are important to the play of the golf course, so there'll be some planting and things going on there that we'll have to address. What we're looking at and what we were congratulated with by the DNR agent that was there is that no other counties have really been addressing this the way we initially did here. They have not had meetings with counties. They were very grateful that we had them in, and the assessment showed that probably within 5 to 8 years, most of the ash trees that we have on our property will be deceased. So what we are looking at is, in some areas, a major loss. In other areas, just with careful planning, we can keep this to a minimum where people will hardly notice. But I want to keep everyone appraised of what's going on. We are probably, by the estimates of our forestry consultant, who has done this for years and is highly regarded, between our removal and replanting costs with labor, we're probably looking at nearly $2 million in total cost between the county properties. So I thought that was important to report to the board here, because we are going to be, asking, we're going to be looking for grants, but we are going to be asking for budgeted money to mitigate these problems. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Alverman. Seeing no more lights, we will move on with the agenda.
Resolutions, one reading from Finance Administration Committee regarding initial resolution authorizing the issuance of general obligation promissory notes in an amount not to exceed $1,700,000 for public safety software. Rose, yes. Ron Frederick, yes. O'Day, yes. Grady, yes. Colmeyer, yes. Kubicki, yes. Molinaro, yes.
Supervisor Rose.
Members of the board, I would move resolution number 63.
Resolution 63 has been moved by Supervisor Rose, seconded by Vice Chair Kubicki. Supervisor Rose.
As you recall, this resolution came before the board and was referred back to the Finance Committee for consideration, and the following resolution, number 72, was adopted as a package. So we're asking you to vote for both Resolution 63 as well as 72. Resolution 63 is the resolution which asks you to endorse or support the notes for $1,700,000 for the public safety software. Much has been said about it. I'm not going to repeat that, as we've had an extensive discussion about that at our last meeting with the consultant.
Thank you, Supervisor Rose. Since it is bond related, we will ask for a roll call, and we do need 3/4 votes. That passes 21-0.
New business, Resolution 72 from Finance Administration Committee, a resolution, Joint Service Public Safety Software. Rose, yes. Ron Frederick, yes. O'Day, yes. Grady, yes. Colmeyer, excused. Kubicki, yes. Molinaro, yes.
Supervisor Rose.
On behalf of the Finance Committee, I would move resolution number 72.
Resolution 72 has been moved by Supervisor Rose, seconded by Supervisor Ron Frederick. Supervisor Rose.
Thank you. This resolution was considered and drafted and endorsed by the Finance Committee at our last meeting. This is to be read in conjunction, as I said before, with resolution number 63. You've heard the recommendations or the progress report of our consultant at our last meeting, and this is tied in with the endorsement by the board to approve or disapprove the software to be purchased prior to the disbursements of the funds that we have authorized in resolution number 63. So this does give the board, I think, necessary control over the expenditure of money and the endorsement of what we believe to be the software recommendation that will be presented to us sometime in the future.
Thank you, Supervisor Rose. All those in favor? Roll call is requested. That passes.
Resolution 73 from Finance Administration Committee, a resolution providing for the approval by Kenosha County of the execution and delivery of an amended and restated bond and sale agreement in connection with the outstanding community facility revenue bond, Kenosha YMCA project, Series 2009, and related matters. Rose, yes. Ron Frederick, yes. O'Day, yes. Grady, yes. Colmeyer, yes. Kubicki, yes. Molinaro, yes.
Supervisor Rose.
I would move resolution number 73.
Resolution 73 has been moved by Supervisor Rose, seconded by Supervisor Colmeyer. Supervisor Rose.
These are what they call revenue bonds. In 2009, the YMCA came to this board and asked us to issue or to endorse and lend our name essentially to bonds which totaled some $8.3 million. The county is not liable for those bonds, either the 2009 bonds or this resolution here this evening, which will allow the YMCA to issue $5,710,000 in bonds. Now, what are revenue bonds? This is a bond which the Congress authorized a number of years ago. A private nonprofit agency such as the YMCA, in an effort to construct a new building, can come to Kenosha County and ask us to lend our support in our name to these bonds, which will be issued and the YMCA is responsible for. And I again emphasize the county is not responsible. The YMCA is responsible for those bonds. The purchaser of those bonds receives a tax break. The original bonds were, I say, $8,300,000. There are certain supporters of the YMCA who were willing to reduce the principal that the YMCA owed on the bonds by pledging $1,600,000, and thereby saving the YMCA a substantial amount of money in interest and the term. The original term was 25 years, now it will be 21 years. $5,710,000 will replace the $8.3 million previously authorized. So this is a new issue, and the board is being asked once again to support the nonprofit agencies' revenue bonds and save them some substantial money so that they will have a better cash flow hereafter.
Thank you, Supervisor Rose. Seeing no lights, we will ask for a roll call on this one. Supervisor Noble?
I'm not seeing signatures on my sheet from Finance Committee. Who?
They just had the meeting prior to this meeting, so they just turned the information in. And
Was it unanimous?
Yes. Did you read it?
Thank you.
Yeah, she read it. Anything else, Supervisor Noble? Thank you. Okay, that passes.
Approval of the minutes from the November 19th, 2013 minutes by Supervisor Brunig.
Supervisor Brunig?
Move to approve the minutes.
It's been moved by Supervisor Brunig, seconded by Supervisor Underhill to approve the minutes. All those in favor? I see no lights.
Is there
Aye.
anyone that needs signing?
It's been moved by Vice Chair Kubicki
Second.
to adjourn, seconded by Supervisor Brunig. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed?